This guy is one of the fastest people I have ever seen in my life. And after the guy in front of him spins out, he is going to be right behind us. Mother. So, first race of the day, we are starting in, I believe this is P6 with a 130.8. Not the best qualifying, and if you've been watching, you know I struggle with qualifying lately. Luckily, I'm going to gain 2 positions on start, so up into P4 as those guys get held up behind each other. Car number 5 and 6 behind end up going side by side, so we are able to really just settle into the groove here with the top 3, the podium guys right there. And really hoping that at some point I can find the pace to move myself forward and onto the podium. But for the moment, I'm really worried about just continuing to stay on the track. We have cold tires, it's a cloudy day, it would be very easy to slide out on the first lap before our tires heat up, and that's happened to me quite a lot. Braking a little bit later than I would actually have liked to on the first lap, and yeah, I don't think our braking point made much of a difference there. We took way too much of that curb, and on Zolder, the curbs on the chicanes they will send you flying. So we are down into, I think this is P15 or P14. So last place, basically. I think we have 2 guys out of the race. So at least I'm finishing above those guys. But yeah, that's the gap to the people ahead. It's pretty far, but I am ready to put on my best Ken Miles impression, taking the curbs beautifully now, just a little bit of each, which is optimally what you want to do. You take too much of either one of those and your car will literally go sideways. Somebody locks up their tires into the second chicane, my personal favorite chicane, so I'm able to make up some ground at this point to P13 ahead, and really hoping that I can get these positions with minimal time loss. Another little puff of smoke ahead as that pink car seems to have some sort of incident, and that will just continue to push everybody towards me, which is amazing when you don't have to catch up so much, but rather you just let people fall back towards you. It's still not optimal. I'm not gaining towards the leaders at this point, at least I don't think I am, but I am gaining towards the back of the pack, and each position picked up, I gain like basically a new superpower. It's like picking up coins in Sonic, and I just feel faster and faster. Gonna pick up our first right here as we send it up the inside of car number 13, or car number 14, excuse me. So sending car number 14 down to P14 around the first corner, chasing down the pink car, and we want to stay in this slipstream, juicy slipstream. Gonna suck us up right onto his little tailpipe right there. So we've closed about I'd say a 0.7 second gap in this lap alone. Really hoping to get past him on the rest of this lap, otherwise I know that I'm going to be losing time through the chicane, and we're going to squeeze that gap up even closer. There's really only a couple of opportunities left on the lap, so if we want to get it done, we got to get it done soon. We have what I would say is a better run than him around that corner, and we take him to the downtown dive bar, everybody, sending it way up the inside, down into first gear. Typically I stay in second there, so I went down an extra gear to make sure I met that apex, going side by side with him as we head into the final chicane, which is the final series of corners on this track, going extremely deep, cutting back, jumping the curb, and yeah, he's not going to be happy about that one, but I mean, it was netcode. Our cars did not touch. Granted, my line wasn't amazing. I don't think we would have touched. Maybe we would have. Maybe we wouldn't have. Who knows? Nobody will ever know now. You'll never see that footage again. It's gone. It's burned. You can't look back anymore. I've blocked it from your computer when you try to. So suck on that. Now, moving forward in the race, and we're going to catch up to this guy. So we're currently now in P12, looking to pick up a P11 from the orange and black car number I can't see, and get a good run out of there. We kind of soil it by hitting that oversteer. Good run through the chicane, pretty poor final exit, but we are within slipstream, so we will continue to gain time as long as we don't overslow anywhere. And into this hairpin and out of this hairpin, the visual test is going to be passed. He definitely looks closer than he did before. Coming into the first turn of, I think we're about midway through the race at this point, baiting a move to the inside. I just want to get in his head, and he does go wide, so I want to believe that that was me. I then fake a move to the outside, so he feels safe to move out there, but nah, I'm actually going to go up the inside, slinging it inside, making minimal contact, but I do feel like I left quite a lot of room out there for him to use to get the power down, instead of him trying to continually cut back on us. I was leaving a lot of the track open for him. Either way, we are going to pick up that position. Quite a lot of space ahead now to this guy. It's going to be a few laps until we finally come within, I want to say earshot, but I don't it's definitely not earshot. It's maybe like airsoft range, like airsoft BB gun range, which is when I feel at my fastest, when I'm in airsoft range of somebody ahead. Airsoft range, for anybody who doesn't know, is well, free position. I'll take that one. Didn't have to work much for that one. Airsoft range is right here, where it's like you could reach out of your window with a spring-loaded airsoft gun, and you could hit their car. If you could do that, then you're probably in slipstream. Number one, and number two, for me personally, that's when I feel at my most comfortable to start making looks for moves, or really intentionally being aggressive to try and get into their head. So Hugo Boss here, I'm within Nerf gun range at this point of this guy. Sending it around the inside, he's going to vanish from my sight. This was absolutely terrifying. He just so happens to pop up on the outside of me, so we take a pretty good line there, both of us, honestly, all things considered. And we're going to go side by side towards the final chicane. My nose is just barely ahead. We brake super late and dive in front of him. You can see our wheel kind of wiggling. We almost locked up our tires there. He was very respectful in backing off and letting us have that position, though. So I'm not even sure. I think we're in P9 now, I want to say, crossing the line. And we're going to take a defensive line as well to defend, first and foremost, but really just to make sure no funny business goes on behind us. And we meet that apex pretty beautifully for taking such a defensive line. He is going to have a decent run, but he gets on the throttle slightly too early there, and he has to back off to adjust his line. And by the time we start heading towards the first chicane, I've got enough space that I feel pretty safe into this braking zone, so I'm going to move over and take the racing line. Not worried about a move at this point. Coming through here super cleanly, avoiding too much of those curbs. Somebody ahead has spun off, so free position, and that'll put us up into P8, I believe. And we're crossing the line now onto the final lap here. So I'd say we're 2 seconds behind that yellow and green car ahead. We have 1 lap left to catch them. We have been catching or gaining on them significantly within every lap, probably about a second and a half faster every single lap. So if I could maintain and hopefully barely pick up the pace there, I may be able to put a move onto the last corner of this lap. Through the first sector, it's not looking great. I'd say we gained maybe like 2/10 or 3/10. He's definitely closer, but not by much. The chicane is somewhere with a lot of opportunity to gain time, and sure enough, I'd say that's probably another 2 or 3/10 out of him. We were probably reaching the point of taking half of a second out already, but we are halfway through the lap, so it's not going to be enough if we continue on the same trajectory. Coming through the chicane, we continue to get ever closer. Really only 2 more big opportunities left. We have the hairpin, and then we have the final chicane. Coming into the hairpin, we have to brake as late as we possibly can, and we actually brake a little bit early there. I think what was running through my head was probably, I have to brake as late as I possibly can right now, or this race is over. And then the second thought was, if I do that, I'm probably going to wreck, and then my race will be over. So I actually broke a little bit early. End up settling for P8 and coming across the line there. Now, obviously, we were at P4 in the beginning of this race, so it kind of makes you wonder what could have been, but all things considered, it was a decent recovery drive. Losing only 12 IR and a little bit of safety rating. Feel free to look at anything else if you would like to. Next race, we are starting in P3 with a 1:30.8, so just about the same time as the race before this, but the lobby doesn't seem to be quite as strong. Car number 1 gets a really bad start, and that is fortunate because he is probably the fastest person I have raced with on this track this week. He has put in 29.2, I think was the fastest lap I saw him put in. But the car ahead, Jeff Saville, I have seen him put in a 29.3, so I know that they're going to be on similar pace, and that pace is much faster than me. I really want to do all I can to stay in the slip of Jeff, as car number 1 is only separated from us by this one car who's in between us. Really hoping that this guy would try and fight him here, and he just ends up sending it super deep, completely jumping the curbs and sliding off to the side. So we got about, I think we got 2 corners with somebody between us, and then the floodgates were open. Thankfully, it did hold him back a little bit, so I believe at this point he's about 2 seconds behind us. We're going to try and hold him behind us for as long as we possibly can. Jeff goes extremely deep into the hairpin. Meanwhile, I overslow slightly, so I'm not really going to gain anything on him. And that's something I did a lot. Whenever somebody would go deep into that hairpin or mess up their line, I end up slowing my line down to make sure that I'm able to react if there's an accident or anything happens. There's the gap behind. But really, me slowing down to react just kind of fucked me over a lot. It basically got rid of the advantage that I could have had. And car number 1 continues to chase us down. We are now starting lap 2, still chasing down Jeff, and he seems to be slightly further than the lap before, but honestly not as far as I thought he probably would be, so I'm feeling good about it. However, I don't have the relative showing, but just from the second half of that last lap, I believe his name is, I forgot, car number 1 behind us, I forgot his name. He had closed up that gap by about 3/10, so if that trend continued, he would be on us in about 5 or 6 laps, I think, 6 or 7 laps, and coming across on the second lap, let's check the gap. It's hard to tell, but it is actually smaller. I know it just looks like a bunch of little pixels on the screen, blurry ones at that, but he did close that gap a little bit, and we're gonna hop on board with him now. Obviously, I don't have his telemetry. This is not me driving, but just watching him, it doesn't look all that different to my driving. It is just so very, very smooth. He was extremely smooth. He is braking a little bit later than me there, and he gets a lot more angle when he brakes. I believe that has to do with brake bias, and watching this back, I definitely need to lower my brake bias. I've kept it at the same thing for almost a full year now, and I think it's about time I lower it a little bit. By the time we come through the chicane, he is definitely much, much closer to us. The visual test is passing. I wouldn't say he's in airsoft range, but perhaps paintball, we could call this. Maybe like a Red Ryder BB gun. Although I think that's probably a pretty big range. I've never understood if that's an actual gun or not. I feel like it must not be an actual gun. If that kid shot himself in the eye and it didn't kill him, then it's not an actual gun. If you get shot in the face and you don't die, you probably didn't get shot by a real gun. Enough of that gun talk distraction. Let's pay attention to how slow I am as he comes around the final series of corners, and the gap has absolutely dissipated. He will very soon be within airsoft range, and as he crosses the line, it is going to be the fastest lap of the race, so of course that would happen when he's chasing me down, and I've pretty much accepted my fate at this point. We'll hop back on board with me. You can see on my lap time there, I did a 1:31.1, so about over a second slower than his last lap, and I'm honestly not really feeling too much pressure right now. I'm really not looking to claim P2 in any way, shape, or form. I would be very happy with P3, and this is P4. He's like way behind us, and the gap was ever growing. Even though I was putting in some pretty terrible laps, that gap was still going up, so I knew that it was more about just finding a place to let him pass me cleanly, and it's going to be right here. After we go through the chicane, I lift off the gas, and I'm going to let him go through, and that will be that. So down into a P3 that will probably not change unless we can hopefully see car number 1 catch up to Jeff Saville at the front and look for a fight. But what are the chances of that, right? What are the chances that this guy catches that guy and then we get to win the race, right? Don't skip to the end of this race, but what are the chances of that? Anyway, following him through, and he gaps us immediately within the same lap that we let him pass. He's put like probably a half a second gap to us, and this is the last lap. So white flag lap, and look at this. What happened? Car number 1 caught up to Jeff. Now, no disrespect to Jeff. Jeff is probably the cleanest driver I have ever raced with. I don't think I've ever seen him get into an accident, and he is constantly on the podium or top 5. If not a race win. But on this occasion, he's facing somebody who I do believe is faster than him, which doesn't seem to be the case often, but he catches up to him. He's only got 2 more opportunities, looking to send it up the inside. Pretty audacious move. Jeff not really fazed by that at all as he cuts across. He knows he has that line. He knows he has that space, and he knows this guy's not going to do that, right? And then here we go into the final series of turns, and Jeff is going to go deep this time as car number 1 does actually send it up, and they're going to go side by side, heading towards the line, and car number 1 makes a slight contact with Jeff, and it's going to put him back. He actually ran out of fuel right there. I believe he ran out of fuel. Meanwhile, we are just now coming through the final chicane. That's how far that gap was. The car ahead of us is a back marker, so we are in a P3, but it's a kind of sad P3 when you're like 18 seconds behind the 2 guys in front. It doesn't really feel like a podium finish. It feels pretty rough. It feels like a P6. Feels more like a P6. So end of that race. Here are the results. We gained 43 iRating. We gained 0.09 safety rating, which is great, right? We get to gain safety rating. Gregory, that's his name. 7K iRating, and man, is he fast. Fastest lap, yeah, that 129.8 he put in, and then Jeff put in a 130.1. So those guys, super fast, consistently fast. Next race, we are starting on pole as the number 2 car with a 30.6. Portu Silva behind us. And pause, before we go any further, just want to shout out, just a gentle reminder that the subscribe and like button is down there if you're enjoying these. Either of those really helps me out an absolute shit ton. Also, please pay no attention to the Toyota Aqua that I'm putting in the corner here that's not covering up my hacks. Just ignore that, okay? All right, thank you. Continue. Really great driver. We've driven with him a lot over the last couple of weeks, and on race start it's going to be pretty clean. Car number 11 does drive into the back of me, but that really just kind of catapults me forward, and look at the space it puts between me and everybody else. I mean, honestly, that might have saved me. Car number 3 then drives into car number 11. Somebody hits him, and they go spinning off. Meanwhile, car number 14 in the back runs into car number 7, I think that is, rejoins sideways, spins like 3 people out. This guy gets absolutely decimated, and that was basically the entire rest of the grid. So me, Portu, and there's one guy behind us now at this point, braking at the 100, really trying to carry the speed through here on the first lap. I tend to slow down a lot on the first lap there, consciously slow down, but really making an effort now to keep our speed high right off the bat, as I think that that's something I struggle with. I always kind of have my first 2 laps, I'm getting the tires warmed up, and I'm just scared to push. But I think I need to get more comfortable with maintaining the tires still, but using the grip that is available to me. So I'm working on that and working on being faster right off the bat. We are currently in the race lead where we qualified, so we haven't been passed. And Portu behind us, he's keeping a pretty good gap. At this point, P3 is nowhere to be seen. I have no idea what happened to him. He's just gone. We have about maybe 0.7 seconds, 0.6 seconds till Portu behind us, and we're going to hop on board with him. He was driving a fantastic race. He kept the same gap to us for about 4 laps straight, just like the exact same gap. He was not giving it up, and eventually, as a race leader, that does kind of tend to get into your head a little bit. You know this guy can drive. I've driven with him before. I've had a lot of battles, which is another thing. I know that he is a kind of aggressive driver. He makes it work cleanly, but he will go for moves as soon as they are offered to him. So I was expecting that to happen at some point. Coming out of the chicane, I get a pretty rough exit there, sliding a tire in the dirt and then jumping up the curb there. And this is lap 4, I believe. So he's finally going to have a really good run on me. Not good enough to make a move here, but we are going to go extremely deep here. We have to go down to first and whip that thing around, and we are going to be right behind Portu now. And so with the roles reversed, this is my first time not being in the lead this entire race. And my goal is basically to do exactly what Portu did to me. I just want to follow behind him and keep that exact gap. And I do that for about 5 laps. We're going to whip ahead in a second to lap 8. And you can see the gap has basically not changed at all. I haven't gone for any moves. I'm just driving behind him. So he has trust in me, right? He trusts me to follow him through. There's the gap to people behind. It's non-existent. And there we are, still right up on each other. Really wanting to let him know that I'm working together, right, to push the gap. But at this point, the gap is gone. There is no such thing as a gap. There's a canyon behind us. And in my head, I know that it may take me a bit longer than I really wanted to get a move done on this guy, if I'm even able to get a move done. So the sooner the better to start. We have 8 laps left at this point. So I want to start getting in his head a little bit, looking up the inside, and honestly not looking to actually go up there, but I'm just looking to look. I want him to know that I am looking up there. So it's on my mind. He now knows it's on my mind, and I want to continue to keep that on his mind. Fucking bars. Coming into the first corner, and we're going to follow him through here. We're pretty close. Looking like an opportunity could arise at some point. Staying to the inside just for a second longer, and I think that actually makes him dive in a little bit early, so it affects his line. Sadly, it affects mine too. Obviously, I had to whip myself back out there at the last second, so I don't get the best run out. Neither does he, and that's okay with me. The trade-off for neither of us getting good line was the fact that, you know, he saw me do something slightly aggressive in his mirror, and I want to continue to present that to him, and hopefully at some point it will force him into a mistake, or not force him, but it will allow him to make a mistake. The pressure will weigh down on him, and perhaps the fear of us sending a move from way downtown will make him break, which I have sent a move from way downtown on Portu in the past, so he knows that it's definitely possible. We get a super good exit out of the chicane compared to him. He sent himself a little bit deep in the middle of the chicane, and not the greatest run through that the full sweeping right on the exit, but we're going to look up the inside anyways. Down to first gear, meet the apex perfectly. Portu does well to get on the gas and maintain an outside line that is going to keep him side by side with me, and that will turn into the inside for him during the chicane. So I'm going to send it deep, try and allow him space, and it's a very hard line to take as the outside car there. You can see just how easy it is for him to just turn, and boom, he's on the line immediately. I have to send it in really deep and really find a way to still find the angle. So speed and angle at the same time, which is the difficulty of taking corners. You have to have a balance of those, and it's difficult to get both of them maxed out. Settling back into our rhythm, and this is kind of what happens after you go for a move. You typically end up falling a little bit behind once they successfully pull off a defensive move, and then you spend a lap or half a lap getting back onto the car and looking for another move. So that's where we are picking up right now as we are trying our best to catch back up to him. He does very well to get out of that chicane, which seems to be somewhere I'm having a problem right now. He takes a narrow line there too, doesn't even use all of the runoff, and still seems to pull a gap on me. Once again, continuing to put himself further and further away from me, which is pretty discouraging when you're not able to close back up the gap. But coming into the chicane, he's going to absolutely send it over both of the curbs, lose a ton of speed. We're going to be able to send it side by side. This is the inside for this first, or this is the second chicane. We have the inside for it, braking super late, taking just about as much of each of those curbs as we can, and coming through there with nobody alongside us anymore. As we come in here, you'll see he just kind of, he plays this very safely, honestly. He could have sent that around us. We realized that he had pulled behind us by the time we took that first corner, so we were free to cut across. But I was expecting him to push a little bit harder there. However, the fact that he didn't lets me know that he's looking to make a move happen again. I don't think he was letting us by there. I think he was prepping to make a move on another occasion, and that is a really dangerous place to make a move, to go side by side through there. I see many people die there, so props to him for realizing that. And the race continues. We're both still in the race. I'm going to try to pull a gap. I get a decent run out of the final chicane onto the front straight, and we are feeling pretty damn good at this point. I know he's going to be behind us, but our pace is just overall feeling good. Although the track conditions I don't think were fantastic for this race. Everybody seemed to be pretty slow, at least compared to the races we had been in the past. Even me and Portu were both running laps probably about 3 to 5 tenths slower than we typically would in other races, taking a ton of the curb we do there, and Portu is going to slowly close this gap up, which I was trying to ignore in my relative. I actually turned off my relative at one point to try and just get that completely out of my head. We get a decent exit there, and don't think I'm not watching my rear view mirrors this entire time. I believe this is with 3 laps left. Portu is going to run extremely wide, take a lot of those sausage curbs, which you absolutely want to avoid, and you can see how wide he went there. The gap begins to open up, and then it closes up once again as I just make a bunch of little silly mistakes. It's not like he was faster than me in any particular corner, but just all the way around the track for these last few laps, I couldn't seem to get it right. I was making very small errors, and he eventually closes that gap up to probably 2 or 3 tenths of a second. So right on our tail as we come around to round this lap out, and I'm starting to worry slightly. I turned my relative back on at this point just to really be able to measure where he was faster, or if there was something in particular I was doing differently than him that was allowing him to catch like this. But I think it was really just a combination of small mistakes from me and slipstream from him being the car behind. Coming through the chicane to start the penultimate lap, and he is as close as he has ever been at this point. He's going to, very fortunately for me, put 2 tires in the dirt, and the gap slowly grows between us just enough at just the right time for me to feel a little bit more comfortable. And I see that happen in the relative. He drops off a couple of tenths. This car ahead of us is a back marker, and that kind of worried me because we were closing the gap to him extremely fast, and if we were to catch up to him, there's a possibility that he could cause some sort of accident, or we could get into it. It could open up an opportunity for Portu to go through. So I was really conscious of that and almost trying not to catch him. I was rooting for him to just go faster and faster because I did not want to open up any kind of door there. The gap to Portu, pretty safe at this point as we come on to the final lap of the race. And this is where pressure starts to set in your head sometimes. You have to do your best just to completely ignore it and know that this race is yours. It's coming to you. Just drive a clean race, somewhat at pace, down to third, take the curb, push out wide, and we feel like we have a very clean first corner. The opportunity for Portu would arise as we come through the chicane, the second chicane, middle of the track, and on the exit we dip a tire into the dirt. We initiate a slide and we end up catching it. Thank the freaking Lord. We lose a lot of time though, but fortunately for us, Portu is also going to put a tire in the dirt on the next curb, so tragedy avoided there. My heart definitely skipped a beat as that happened, but we only have one more corner to go, or one more series of corner coming through the chicane. We just have to not fuck this up, take it slower than we typically would, and the car ahead actually moves to the side for us on the final run to the line. So crossing for our first race win of the week, and man, did it feel so freaking good. Couldn't have been a better win for me. I think it could have gone either way between me or Portu, like for basically that entire race. Here are the results. So we finished in P1, 58 iRating, Portu behind us in P2, and I mean, look at this. The gap was less than 2 seconds. And before the last lap, it was even closer. Our lap times were pretty close as well. Feel free to pause, and thank you so much for watching, everybody.